Even the most jaded seen-it-all viewer can be startled by an unexpected reveal. And that's why professional wrestling has long gone to the well of shuffling out cloaked individuals that end up bearing their faces, because they know the response could be absolutely worth it. Sometimes it's one wrestler bearing the costume of an established luchador in order to pull off an unexpected attack, while other times it's an individual slipping on a quick disguise before ambushing their foe. And sometimes an on-screen personality assumes a secret identity, say a Black Scorpion or a higher power, and wreaks havoc from afar before the ultimate grand reveal. Though Ric Flair and Vince McMahon were proven to be those respective beings, each reveal was admittedly a colossal letdown given the potential of and the hype for each. Here we are going to look at unmaskings that were a bit more effective, a bit more satisfying, and/or were just plain mind-bending. This video won't look at unmaskings where the individual underneath was who they were supposed to be, like Juventud as Juventud, or Mysterio as Mysterio, or Kane as a dentist that apparently applies mascara without a mirror. Instead, we're going to look at de-hoodings that might have prompted the holy you-know-what response from your lips, the ones you didn't see coming. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 shocking wrestling unmasking moments. Join us. Number 10, DIABLO Sandwich. The year was 1991, and Sid Justice looked to be an ascending force in WWE. The almighty powerhouse had, as you would expect, been dispatching enhancement talents with ease, and a rather unusual jobber looked to be next on his chopping block. He was El Diablo, a lanky character with a hot pink mask and a salmon-coloured karate gi that one might find at Mark Henry's dojo. To the untrained eye, this poor Diablo, karate stance and all, seemed to have no chance at dropping Sid. Before Diablo and Sid could lock horns, however, The Undertaker and Paul Bearer made their way to the ring. Bearer offered a briefcase to the bewildered Diablo, seemingly trying to buy him out so the Undertaker could battle Sid instead. A grateful Diablo accepted the payoff, thereby bowing out in favour of the ultimate in hoss battles. But it was a very short hoss battle, as Diablo flew back into the ring, unmasked as Jake the Snake Roberts, and in a nice bit of resourcefulness began strangling Sid with the belt from his gi. The two commenced a hearty beatdown on Sid that ended up being somewhat convenient. Justice injured his arm at a house show between the filming of this angle and the air date, so this incident was used to explain Sid being out of action. Number 9, the boys stay golden. What follows may be the most confusing title change in the history of professional wrestling, and considering that WCW used to take title changes out of order, that is really saying something. In September 2000, WWE World Tag Team Champions the Hardy Boys vanquished Edge and Christian in a ladder match where the stipulation was E&C could never challenge for the belts again so long as Matt and Jeff held the gold. What a coincidence then that Los Conquistadors suddenly re-emerged in WWE after a decade's absence and began targeting the Hardys. Now, these two conquistadors bore similar heights to Edge and Christian, but it couldn't have been them because we sometimes saw Edge and Christian hang out with the pair in backstage segments. The two masked men went on to defeat the Hardys for the belts at No Mercy, but had to turn around and defend the titles against Edge and Christian on Raw the next night, which sounded like shenanigans. But instead of the two hired goons that Edge and Christian paid off to don the suits, one of whom was actually Christopher Daniels, the more you know, the nefarious Canadians got when Los Conquistadors bowled them over to retain their titles, before unmasking as the Hardys. So technically, the Hardys once beat themselves for the tag team titles at a pay-per-view? Somehow that doesn't even rank among the 50 weirdest things either man has done. Number 8, interactive fan experience. This one makes it for the sheer absurdity, as well as the fact that it did catch the viewer off guard. In the spring of 1998, Stone Cold Steve Austin was dealing with Vince McMahon's corporate gauntlet on a weekly basis, constantly being given one obstacle after another to try and navigate. 2 weeks before Austin was to defend the WWE title against Dude Love at the Over the Edge pay-per-view, Stone Cold had to face Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe in a handicap match with Sergeant Slaughter as guest ref. Understandably, Austin just beat the hell out of all three guys because that's what Stone Cold does. He then had to contend with a meddling Dude Love at ringside after the abbreviated skirmish. As the two duked it out, a fan in a Stone Cold Halloween mask and otherwise normal attire hopped the rail. He initially tackled Dude Love, and because the cameras didn't cut away, you figured this had to be part of the show somehow. And sure enough, the tackle was a ruse, as the fan picked up a chair and clunkily whacked Austin in the back with it before strolling off while doing the Stone Cold head shake. Austin then began accosting the fan, which you might have guessed was Vince McMahon the whole time. It bears mention just for McMahon doing Austin's mannerisms in a Halloween mask because, come on, that's just funny. Number 7, Web of Deceit. This one was not a work at all, though one of the participants was certainly left out of the planning. In 1985, WWE Women's Champion Wendy Richter was at the peak of her career. A celebrity connection with Cyndi Lauper and 2 major title victories, one on a widely viewed MTV special, the other at the first WrestleMania, positioned Richter as a genuine star. But there were issues. Apparently, Richter butted heads with McMahon over compensation, with some reports indicating that Richter refused to ink a new deal with Vince until her lawyers read things over. So, on November 25th that year, Richter arrived at Madison Square Garden to film a match with a masked women's wrestler known as the Spider Lady. Whoever Richter believed was under the mask, that wasn't who Richter had entered the ring with. When the Spider Lady cradled Richter for a pinfall attempt, the champ kicked out on one, but the referee counted the fall anyway. Irate and confused, Richter managed to unmask the Spider Lady afterward, revealing her to be the fabulous Moolah, and Richter claimed to be none the wiser until the hood came off. Moolah, McMahon, and others conspired to get the belt off of Richter in this fashion, earning it the name the original Screwjob. Richter walked out of WWE that night and claims to have never spoken to Moolah again. Number 6, Extreme Savior. For this entry, it's not exactly clear why a disguise was needed. So much about this assault felt unnecessarily dressed up for the sake of drama. That said, nobody in the audience at the 2006 ECW One Night Stand was going to complain about the results. Promotional hero Rob Van Dam was facing WWE champion / apparent scourge of humanity John Cena for the gold. As far as ECW fans were concerned, Satan himself would have been more than permitted to interject himself in the match, ensuring that this was one big match that Big Match John didn't win. Late in the bout, with the referee unconscious, Cena had Van Dam sufficiently worn down when a man in a trench coat and an all-concealing motorcycle helmet stormed the ring. He speared Cena through an already set table before stepping back and removing the helmet to reveal himself as Edge. Now, one has to wonder what the point of the disguise was, seeing as Edge had wrestled earlier in the night, so it's not like he had to sneak into the building, but man, did that crowd of 2,500 in New York go nuts for the reveal anyway. This was especially comical, seeing as more than an hour earlier, Edge had to run down ECW fans for being awkward shut-ins, and now here he was, their knight in polycarbonate armor. Number 5, Muscled Masquerade. For the 1991 Halloween Havoc, the Z-Man Tom Zenk was issued with a rather mysterious opponent, a man simply known as the WCW Halloween Phantom. With a name like that, he could have well been a guy that lives underneath Atlanta's Omni and plays generic stock music on an organ. Little was known to the home audience about this Phantom, but apparently Zenk was up for anything and agreed to wrestle this person sight unseen. Come the pay-per-view, out strode the Phantom to a ghoulish bark composition, shrouding his masked face with his cape. The Phantom demolished Zenk in under 90 seconds, finishing with a hangman's neckbreaker that Tony Schiavone noted is known in some circles as the Rude Awakening. A bit later in the night, Eric Bischoff interviewed Medusa and Paulie Dangerously, the latter of whom vengefully vowed to pay WCW back for their treatment of him. He planned to do this by destroying Sting and introduced the Phantom as his human weapon. After building up his new client in a way that only Heyman can, the mysterious Phantom removed his mask in time with Heyman screaming out the name Ravishing Rick Rude. Rude then polished off his well-done WCW debut by affirming what Paulie said, vowing to bring Sting and WCW to their ruin. Just a year after killing off any intrigue in the Black Scorpion build by bungling every bit of it, WCW got the Phantom's reveal exactly right. Number 4, Brother Act. WWE Champion Stone Cold Steve Austin needed an opponent for the 1998 SummerSlam, and evil boss Vince McMahon was going to make sure that Austin received the most daunting challenge possible. That's why one night on an episode of Raw, he instituted a triple threat match between 3 of WWE's most barbaric brawlers, Mankind, Kane, and The Undertaker. None had any love lost for Stone Cold, and they'd all given the champion all he could handle in previous encounters. Mankind entered first for this main event war, followed by sometimes partner Kane. Then Undertaker's music hit, but strangely, the Phenom didn't enter. Confusion followed as McMahon, Austin, and everyone else questioned where Undertaker could possibly be. But McMahon, he wanted a challenger, and he wanted one now, so he just ordered the match to take place with Kane one-on-one against Mankind. Very quickly, Kane caved Mick Foley's skull in with a steel chair and wasted no time in pinning his motionless ally. But only a few beats into the aftermath did Kane remove his mask to reveal that it was the Undertaker in the get-up all along. The tantalizing "Are Kane and Undertaker in cahoots?" question was strung out during the long build to Undertaker vs Stone Cold, a critical part of the 1998 SummerSlam, which remains the most bought SummerSlam of all time. Number 3, plastered before the reception. The Billy and Chuck commitment ceremony wasn't exactly the shining beacon of WWE TV when it first aired, and hindsight has been a little less kind to it given the crass treatment of the subject matter. Billy and Chuck were split soon after when Billy Gunn sustained an injury, so the whole angle ended up being moot anyway. But one part that always gets the credit, and deservedly so, was the performance of the Justice of the Peace that presided over the ceremony. He was this little frail man who appeared to be about 115 years old, trembled like a wind-up alarm clock, and had a face like something out of the Land of Confusion music video. His laboured speech cadence was high comedy alone until he suddenly brought a halt to the ceremony by speaking in his real voice. Turns out it was Raw GM Eric Bischoff wearing the mother of all prosthetic jobs, and he was there to undermine SmackDown's big ratings grab. With the assistance of 3-minute warning and a treacherous Rico, Bischoff made sure that Billy, Chuck, and even SmackDown GM Stephanie McMahon were laid to waste. The elaborate makeup looked realistic enough that when Bischoff dramatically ripped the pieces off, the fans couldn't help but wildly cheer. It was a totally unexpected swerve done with plenty of panache. Number 2, remember me? By the time 1998 rolled around, Chris Jericho was discovering the best version of himself, a cheerfully smug and aloof villain that denigrated his opponents, building his soaring legacy on the backs and bruised egos of the competition. One such wrestler left in Jericho's wake was veteran Dean Malenko, whose career and family Jericho mercilessly ran down. Malenko failed to defeat the antagonistic Cruiserweight champion at that year's uncensored pay-per-view, and humbly went into self-imposed exile as a result. And Jericho, the dominant force of the Cruiserweight scene, he continued to cackle and gloat as only he can. 2 months later at Slamboree, a Battle Royal was held in which the winner earned an immediate shot at Jericho's Cruiserweight Championship. Jericho did mocking introductions for all the entrants before assuring us all that no one from the field had a prayer against him. The match came down to reasonable contender Juventud Guerrera and deep undercarder Ciclope, and Juvie appeared to be the obvious winner. That was until they shook hands, and the Juice intentionally threw himself out. A mystified Jericho demanded answers, and he got one when Ciclope unmasked to reveal himself as Malenko, prompting the loudest cheer the man of 1,000 holds has likely ever heard. Minutes later, and Jericho was submitting to Malenko's Texas Cloverleaf, netting the title and sweet revenge for the veteran. Number 1, Bonesaw wasn't ready. It wasn't all that uncommon on WCW Monday Nitro for star wrestlers to match up with the mid-card on down. That's why when NWO member Macho Man Randy Savage squared off with cult favourite La Parka on an episode in July 1997, nobody really batted an eye. Just looked to be a quick tune-up win for Savage in between matches with arch-nemesis Diamond Dallas Page. Since the spring, the wars between Savage and Page had not only been violent, but also personal after Savage took to humiliating Page's then-wife Kimberly. So, on this Nitro, Savage is taking it to La Parka in your usual extended squash. Macho had the match in hand to such a degree that fellow NWO enforcer Scott Hall left the ringside area, going over to taunt announcer Larry Zbyszko at the broadcast center. With La Parka laying prone, Savage went to drop the big elbow, only for La Parka to plant his boot into Macho's mush. Quickly, La Parka regained his vertical base and dropped Savage with a diamond cutter before ripping the mask off to bear the mug of everyone's favorite yoga guru. Adding to this incredibly surreal moment were Tony Schiavone's cries of "That's not La Parka!" and Hall walking back toward the ring with his arms raised in celebratory fashion, assuming the sound of the bell meant that Savage had won. It might just be the primest example of how surprising an unassuming audience with a wrestler in disguise can leave a positive, lasting impression even decades later.